So welcome to the Market Mentors podcast, Pavey.
Thank you, Matt. Nice to be here.
Absolute pleasure. So before we get stuck into this one, I'd love to know what your relationship is with B2B tech marketing.
Yeah, B2B tech marketing, it's been my entire career. So 25 years in B2B tech companies, mostly in Silicon Valley. So I spent over 20 years in San Francisco, glorious days, and then also worked this side of the pond as well.
Wow. And you've worked for some big companies, haven't you? Some of the large companies out there, aren't they? BEA and Oracle and VMware and, as well as some startups. So you've kind of covered all bases in a way, haven't you?
Yeah, I was like VP of marketing when I left VMware, who just got sold. So that's kind of come full circle. You see a lot of things in this industry over 25 years. And then also CMO at a few startups and then did some interim roles. And I thought, what can I do next? I got to kind of that point where I reached C-level and I thought, I'd like to help more people. And so now I am exclusively coaching.
Awesome. So I have an idea, and this is sort of leading into the fact that you're talking to lots of the people that this podcast is really centered around. And I have an idea of kind of what's happening out there because, I speak to a lot of B2B tech marketing leaders each week. But Pavey, you're also doing that now through your coaching, aren't you? So what do you think is the sort of sentiment amongst these people right now then?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I kind of bring in, I just came back from California. And so, when you touch base with people in Silicon Valley, our industry, B2B tech, is influenced with what's happening over in the States. And so the sentiment over there is, I think it's been a knock-on for the last year since sort of Silicon Valley Bank went down and everybody's being a bit cautious. So I kind of view it as a little bit of crunch time. Plus, both the US and UK economies and what's going on there. I think whether you're a thriving large company, a smaller startup, everyone's being just a little bit more cautious right now. And that's having an interesting effect on individuals.
And, from our side, we've spoken to a lot of people who've been made redundant. There's almost feels like I know a lot of caution out there, but certainly within the sort of startup and scale up world, it feels like there's been a bit of a correction as well. So lots of these companies that have been out there spending money that was probably easier to come by when you're thinking of it retrospectively. It's been quite a shock for a lot of people, actually.
Yeah, and again, it's a knock-on, isn't it? The VCs tighten their belt and everybody has to kind of follow suit. So, it's that usual place that marketing has found itself in for many a decade, which is do more with less.
Yes.
Your budget might not be quite what it was. You may not get the contractors. And and as you said, even layoffs as well.
Yeah. And I can imagine some people might think with this in mind then that actually, with smaller budgets, with the fact there's a little bit more caution out there, let's play it safe. You go back to kind of what we know works, go back to the programs that we've delivered before that have an ROI. What do you think? Do you think I'm right or do you think I'm wrong then when I'm saying that people should be thinking about playing it safe right now?
Yeah, so I'd like to think that it's not really just a time to play it safe, right? Because I don't think anybody really got to greatness out of mediocrity and just kind of doing the safe stuff. I think there's a time and a place for if you've got tried and true programs, yeah, absolutely, implement them. But at what percentage, right? So at best, 50% play it safe. But then, do something a bit bigger and bolder. When you and I talk, Matt, I've got a certain view of marketing, which is there's small M and there's big M. So the small M kind of marketing is, you market the products or the services, right? You kind of, do what it says on the box. But the big M is, it's this bigger opportunity to actually look at what's happening in the broader marketplace and look at those industry insights and trends and bring that back to the company. And it's a much larger role. So I think just like when marketeers are kind of looking at what's my role and my value right now, I think that's kind of a good ethos for them to take on board of how should I be showing up.
Yeah, because I think a lot of marketers want to influence, don't they? And I think when we spoke the other week, you hit the nail on the head, is that out of all these people who are sat around a table, senior leadership team, marketing has the privilege that they're actually outwardly looking a lot of the time in terms of these insights and the creativity, and could be seen as the person to be able to steer the business through these types of the situations that we're in right now. So, yeah, I think a lot of the time marketeers almost have the fear that actually the pipeline sits with them, the MQL sit with them, and this sort of pressure mounts and mounts and mounts, rather than sort of taking a step outside of that and thinking, yeah, how can I influence? How can I bring insights to the business to be able to help the company continue to grow or get out of its sticky situation that it's in right now?
Yeah, exactly. It is the only function that sits around the table that can look not only outside of the company and the industry and look what's going on, but longevity as well. Where are the early market indicators? Where should we be moving? And then, helping the rest of the functions in the organization, sales, product development, whoever, and customer success, understand here's what's going on. Here's where we should be skating towards. So it's a really important, impactful role if we get out of the mundane day to day, which is why playing it small and just keeping your head under the covers and just delivering on your pipeline is not going to be good enough.
Yeah. And when you were a VP, I mean, how did you sort of practically kind of do this kind of stuff? Did you carve out time to be able to be thinking about strategic stuff? Because invariably you've got things coming at you left, right and center, haven't you?
Yeah, you do. But, you always kind of have to go to that point of where can you add value? And so, I had great people in my team who were just experts, like product marketing would have its eye on what are the analysts saying? Let's do market research. Let's kind of figure out what's going on out there in a broader way, and take the pulse of the market. And I think you have to make time for that. And I would also say as a coach, you also have to make time for upgrading your own kind of skills as well of how you do that.
And definitely a good time to be doing that for some people. So you mentioned earlier about it being crunch time then, which always puts additional pressure, I'm sure you've been there yourself, on go-to-market teams. And often that can sometimes sort of turn into a bit of a blame game, sales blaming marketing for the lack of leads, etc. But from your experience when you're talking to senior B2B marketing leaders right now, then, is that still a challenge? Is the relationship between sales and marketing still something that is a struggle?
Yeah, so we've always had this thing of sales and marketing. Funnily enough, like most of my career, and the more senior I got, this is true, including my last CMO role, I elected to report to the CRO or the CSO just to get that alignment. So it's less about sales versus marketing. I think what it's more about is what's actually going on with the additional pressure in the industry and in people's roles right now. And even if it wasn't the economic climate that it is, you'd get that pressure anyway, because when you do well, what happens? They give you bigger targets and bigger teams and bigger budgets and just go do more, right? So I think what we have to take a look at is what's really going on with leadership in those functions and what's happening with the people and the individuals. So from my perspective, what I see is, a lot more sort of work-life balance issues, right? How do you do more with less? It's not just about working an extra couple of hours in the evening and then it's the weekends and then you can't see the wood for the trees. And then, stress management and how do we handle that? And then if that kind of perpetuates, it's going to have a knock-on impact on people's confidence. So how does that show up with these two different functions? And I think it shows up slightly differently, but there's some commonality. So I think what happens with sales is, and I coach a fair few sales leaders, is, it's funny how many you talk to, and if they're honest, they say, I'm only as good as my last sales quarter. And you're like, you're only as good as your last sales quarter. It's like, yeah, because that's what companies say. It's all about this quarter. And it's not even about quarters anymore, as you know, in B2B, it's all about SaaS. And with the subscription model, we're going into monthly pressures. So it's even more frequent. And, you can't kind of get away from this. So people start getting into this kind of like sink or swim mentality of, well, I've got a fear of failure, right? There's a lot of uncertainty. So I don't want to sink. So I better swim as fast as I can. So I'll just do more. right? And outswim everybody else. But that doesn't work for a long amount of time. You can only do that for a short amount of time. So when I chat with people, and this is whether it's sales or marketing, and with marketing, it's the same, right? There's so many marketing organizations now are metrically driven, whether it's pipeline or digital marketing or whatever it is, there's numbers associated with everything. And it's just a bit of a challenge keeping up with that relentless pace. And so I like to think about, like talk to people about, like, if you're an iceberg, there's one face that you've got above the water, right? And that calm, I've got it. Yeah, you can give me more. I can handle more. And then the absolute flailing that's going on underneath the surface, which is the majority of the iceberg. And so what it comes down to is when we look at things like confidence, a lot of people do have a belief that I'm not good enough. I'm going to get found out. I'm doing the best that I can, but I'm not sure I really believe that I've got this. So, sales, what happens with them is, they start pushing on marketing. Which isn't natural, right? They'll be told, well, you didn't make your sales quota, so how's your pipeline looking? And they'll be like, oh, pipeline, marketing? My pipeline's not there. And then marketing will be like, right, I'm solely responsible for your pipeline, am I? And if we're not careful, sales get smaller, marketing gets smaller, and then we head into conflict. And that's when it's a lose-lose, right? And then you get into weird situations, which I've been in many times, where, you get divisional sales leaders coming up with brilliant ideas for marketing. I want to do this event next quarter, or even worse, next week. What marketing, can we just do this event? I think it will get us out of the hole that we're in. Obviously not that easy. So I think what marketing can do is can't control sales, can't control what you can't control. But you can control being that bigger M, as we talked about before, right? And being the advisor. This is going to work. This is not going to work. I think what we should do is this, this, and this.
Fine. And on a practical level, you touched on a great example there, actually, which is sales almost not pushing on marketing, but look, leads are down. I've got this great, it's always been good for us in the past. Let's do it. If the pressure's high then, and pressure, I want to say, pressure in terms of the immediate, let's do this event, but the wider aspect, i.e., leads aren't coming through, it can be easier for marketing to sort of toe the line a little bit, isn't it? But let's say you're in that situation. I mean, how would you sort of handle it if the sales are sort of putting the pressure on you and saying, look, Pavey, let's do this event, leads are down, I think it's going to work, come on, we've got to do something. How would you sort of handle that?
Yeah, you just got to be more strategic, but you can't, being reactive and just saying yes, because you're trying to people please or for whatever reason, right? Trying to get on the good side of sales is, even when that event is too late, you're not prepared, it's going to be money out the window, why bother? I think in order to not be reactive and be strategic, you have to be confident. You have to be confident saying, look, here's my advice and here's my experience and what I think we should do, but get in the boat together and solve the problem together. So don't lose that collaboration, open a dialogue. It's not a yes, no. It's a let's sit down and have a conversation. But again, you have to be confident. And if you're coming from this mindset of I'm not good enough, you're more likely to buckle in and say, all right, then fine, yeah, I'll do what you want to do. Whereas a confident marketing leader would, feel like they do have that confidence to be able to say, yeah, no, let's go for coffee. Let's sit down. Let's have a look at what we're trying to solve and solve it together in the best possible way. There are multiple things that we can do. Let's figure out what we want to do. And then you make a joint decision.
Great. And when you're talking about getting the boat together, then that's that bit where you're talking about, okay, look, let's jointly solve this. If we're going to do this event, let's do it. But actually in the next quarter, if this doesn't work, let's move on to these priorities that I've discussed. So you're not necessarily saying no, but you're just kind of jointly agreeing it rather than it being dictatorial.
Yeah. And it shouldn't be dictatorial, right? This whole marketing is subservient to sales. That's just hogwash, isn't it? Marketing are there in their own right, as we just talked about. The only function in the company that can pull in market insights in a way that nobody else can. So there's real value there. So I think marketing needs to remind themselves, do bring value, and you as an individual bring value. So be confident in that and have the right level of conversations, but be open about it and be humble. there's no place for, swords at dawn and let's go into conflict. It's unnecessary.
Good stuff. Good stuff. You mentioned earlier about working on yourself. I mentioned about sort of people being made redundant. So, one of the key themes at the moment really is the sort of instability out there in the market. You only have to look at the sort of average tenure of B2B marketing leaders. It's not very long, is it, these days? So, let's say, for instance, you are a B2B marketing leader, you've been made redundant, for instance. It can be a pretty stressful time. Also, if you're in work with this added pressure of the pipeline, all that sort of stuff, it can be very stressful too. So as you've coached sort of many of these leaders, then what leadership development areas are most important, do you think, for them, for people to be working on them?
Yeah, so I think what it really comes down to is whether you're in job or you're in the market for a new job, if you have been laid off, it is, again, working on that confidence. And, just to kind of tell you like a quick story. So, my nephew, who's 5, right, comes out of nursery. I pick him up sometimes, comes out of nursery, and he's, holding up this picture. I wish I had it now. I've got it somewhere running around. Holding up this picture, which is like 2 lines of whatever on a piece of paper. But he could not be more excited about what he's come up with. And he's absolutely full of confidence. And I'm like, oh, Sean, that's really good work. And he was like, no, it's amazing. And we sometimes lose our confidence, but that's exactly what it is. We all had confidence when we were 5. So what happened along the way that it kind of chipped away? And a layoff is going to be the ultimate knock to confidence, isn't it? You're going to start questioning, was it me? Was it just the circumstance? Could I have done anything different? And then we get in our heads. And that's not where we want to be. So I think, doing the work necessary to kind of realize, don't come from an insecure place, come from a place where you understand your worth, you're confident about your abilities, and you trust yourself. You're like, yeah, I can do this. I can go get another job, I can get that promotion, I can do whatever, and not come from this, small, constricted space, regardless of the environment that you're in.
And what's the best way to actually build that then, do you think? Because, saying these words are a bit easier than actually building it yourself, isn't it? So, and even the best people out there, I mean, I'm sort of talking outside of this sort of space right now, but I just finished watching the Ronnie O'Sullivan documentary on Amazon. So big into my sport, but it's amazing when you see somebody who is as good as that, who also works on himself through a guy called sort of Dr. Steve Peters, who talks about the sort of chimp paradox, isn't it? So, even somebody that is as good as that works on themselves. These words can be sort of easier said than done. What do you think people could be doing to practically sort of build this?
Yeah, I think first of all, just getting honest with themselves about, where they're at. And again, not just the mask that they're putting on for everybody else, but how are they really feeling behind the scenes? And if they are feeling insecure, figure out why. So the chimp paradox, and that little nagging voice that starts telling you, don't go for that role, that's a bit above you. Are you sure you're going to go for that? Play it safe, stay small, keep your head down, right? All of that negativity is coming from, we talk about a lot in coaching about inner critic or the saboteur, right? This is something that you've actually developed and built, right? As a kid, you've done life, and you're kind of like, oh, right, okay, well, that situation didn't work out for me, so I'll start, I'll let the inner critic kind of run that one, and it runs out in front in difficult situations, and your best self and your authentic self is kind of in the back seat a little bit. And if you do that too much, you start to create, just like muscles, like muscle memory, the inner critic in any type of adversity will come out right up front. Well, and then that could be in the course of daily pressures of, an everyday situation where you don't want the inner critic coming out like a 10-ton shield. So there, it's about, understanding, well, where's that story coming from? It's just a story, but where's it coming from? And then figure out, okay, well, instead of going into autopilot and listening to that story, I'm going to say, no, that's not true. Okay, I'm going to do things differently. And then you start building new muscles and firing new neurons and saying, okay, well, if you don't feel good enough, what's going to get you to a place of, I am confident and I do feel like I can do this. Because I think every leader, and you ask about the traits as well, every leader, really wants to be more creative, more innovative. I mean, we're in tech. That's the lifeblood of the industry. So you're not going to have big ideas and be wildly creative if you're feeling insecure or small. So it's about like flipping the script and saying, no, I can figure out how to get there. Another one is trust and empathy. Simon Sinek talks a lot about this. Right? You could have the same person in two different companies, wildly different experience. And so leadership should be about making people feel like it's a safe environment. I've got your back. Understanding where people are coming from, what's going on with them outside of work. So these are all traits. And I would say, to answer your question, Matt, if you're somebody who's out of work and looking, invest in yourself to be the leader that you want to show up as.
Well, I mean, in the US, they have a big coaching philosophy, don't they? They have people who, and I'm trying to think of the other word now, but counseling even, sort of, where you can lay yourself bare and sort of, get these things off your mind. So I think sometimes us British are a little bit more reserved with this sort of stuff, aren't we? But it sounds like we need to get out of that, really. But so final question then, Pavey. You have been a B2B tech marketing leader yourself then. So what do you think it takes then to become a successful B2B tech marketing leader right now?
Yeah, well, I would say the first thing is, for the interest of time, there's a lot that can be done around confidence, but being confident and understanding your value and be strategic. Don't play small. Now is not the time to play small. That's number one. Number two is innovation and creativity. Have those big, bold ideas, but again, you have to have the confidence in order to have them in the first place. And the third one, Matt, is about being humble. It's this idea of service-based leadership. So it's, taking care of people that are in your charge, not having this idea of you're in charge and at the top of the pyramid. And I think with that comes a lot of collaboration. And it's not just about you and you winning. It's about taking the whole team along with you.
Love it. Love it. Well, Pavey, this has been a fantastic talk. You've got so many good points in this. The one that sort of struck me was this small M, big M. I love it. The idea that people should really get out there and start playing big. And now is the time to really do that. So it's been fascinating to hear you talk about this. If anybody wants to reach out to you for any questions or advice or help, what's the best way of them doing it?
Find me on LinkedIn, ping me there, go to my website, paveypurewal.com. It's just my name.com. Get in touch. I'd love to chat with people more.
Pavey, you're a star. Thank you.